What I discovered in Wolfenstein 3D on June 14, 2005 was beyond any doubt in my mind the most horrific and most absurd thing that has ever happened to me. What happened was I had accidentally stumbled upon some sort of secret ending hidden within Wolfenstein 3D. But as it turns out, I stumbled onto something more than just an ending. It's been 2 years, and if I can recall, I was trying to figure out how to do reskins of the guard dogs. Basically, really amateur stuff at that point, so I truly don't have a clue as to how I managed to stumble onto this. I remembered it was getting late past 1 AM, I know that for sure, and I had tons of different programs up. Some for modifying sprites, some for extracting files and converting them. Anyway, even though I was extremely tired but didn't feel like giving up just yet, I thought I'd rest my head. Putting my head down, I accidentally dropped my hands onto the keyboard. That's what set it off. I heard a few abnormal beats cut through my headset. Looked up and lo and behold, there was a folder extracting to my desktop with the name E6M11, which was weird considering that the last level of Wolfenstein 3D was E6M10, which is a secret level for episode 6. I went into the folder and saw hundreds upon hundreds of files. I had no idea how could have this happened. At first, I thought it had just copied itself multiple times, but after some review, I saw each one had a unique 10-digit code. I also had no idea what file type they were, as they weren't any I could recognize then or now. Its file extension being .kkr. I have no idea what that means then, and I still don't have an idea what that means now. By now, I was worried. I might have damaged or corrupted some of my files, or had contracted a virus through some means. So I ran my antivirus, which didn't detect any abnormality other than a single potential threat which came from within the folder I had just extracted. I was a second away from clicking remove, but a spark went off inside my head telling me, "You gotta check this out." Stupid, I know. Checking out a potential threat from something I had no idea how I got in the first place. But what else can I say? I was young and stupid. Going in, it led me to an exe file. Finally, something I could recognize. Clicking it, Windows completely blacked out, and I feared the worst. It was going to cut to a blue screen, but it didn't. It went straight to the Wolfenstein 3D menu, except everything seemed different. Slightly darker, with its background music being slightly more menacing, and instead of a gun pointing at the options, it was now a plain black arrow. There were only 3 options anyways. New game, options, and die. The last one seemed a little too serious and morbid to be a joke by id Software, and just really had me uneasy at looking at that option. Are they referring to maybe quitting, giving up? And if you gave up, your character would die, possibly for added immersion? That's what I thought, at least, and every time I moved the arrow down, I could feel a tingling in the back of my spine, like a chill that something wasn't quite right about it. So I continued with new game, though there was only one difficulty option. Please kill me! It's unlike any difficulty option I'd seen before in an id Software game. Again, it just seemed too serious to be taken as the usual lighthearted joke they usually insert into all of their early games. With only one option, it didn't really seem like a choice at this point. I had a bit of paranoia about what I was going to get myself into, but simply disregarded it as an overactive imagination. When it started, you were armed with just your knife, not your gun as usual, and you started with a large open field at nighttime. At first, I thought, oh cool, maybe it's like a stealth mission. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I wandered about in the field for a good 5 minutes, finding absolutely nothing other than dark green grass and a pitch black sky above. The distance seemed to taunt me as it showed me the edge of the map, hardly even visible. A thin line of brush and with some twinkling lights behind them. like stars, which seem way off. After about 10 minutes, I was about to exit thinking it to be some sort of unfinished map that they have forgotten to get rid of. But again, I felt that tingling in my spine as I went over to the die option. Allowing my paranoia to get the better of me, I decided to trudge on. Exiting the menu and going back to wandering, I saw an orange light in the distance. Following it, I eventually ended up in a house. What worried me about this though was that the Wolfenstein 3D engine couldn't handle 2 levels on top of each other. No, in fact it wasn't even possible for it to do that. Now I knew something was up, but I kept going on with it. Stepping inside the 2-story log cabin, there wasn't much inside, and it was approximately 6 by 6, an extra space for the fireplace, and on the ground was textured to look wooden with a carpet. Off to the side were stairs, something I, and no one else for that matter, had ever seen in a Wolfenstein 3D engine. The stairs had a foreboding look to them as this fireplace idly sat there, crackling and actually lighting the room somehow, making everything seem calm but eerie. Ignoring my judgment, I went upstairs and the screen began glitching out a bit. When I reached the top, everything seemed to cool off. On the second floor, there were 2 different doors. One looked wooden and the other had some strange design on it. The door itself was black, with its symbol being thin white lines. It looks like there were 3 sevens, all adjoined at the bottoms of each other, each one facing the same direction, making some sort of saw blade design. Deciding to play it safe, first I entered the wooden door. It made a creaking sound as it slowly opened, actually swinging open. And again, I was quite taken aback by how advanced this was for the engine. The room was dark with the only light in the center of it and all of the corners being dark. Naturally, I went to the center. For a few seconds I stood there seeing if anything would happen, but nothing did. Thinking nothing of it, I turned and I nearly had a heart attack as there was a lone guard standing behind me. He looked extremely thin, pale, and the most pathetic looking, standing there hunched over in his uniform. As he was blocking my way to get out, I simply stabbed him once and he crumbled into a pile of white dust. It was so smooth, it almost didn't seem like animation at all. Nearly unbelievably looking because of it being a sprite, almost human-like. Astonished at what I had been seeing, I continued cautiously into the next room through the door with the 3 circular sevens on it. What I saw in there was beyond horrifying. Instead of opening regularly, it seemed to suck me in, a black void, and before I knew it, I was in some weird chamber lined with rows of actual images of Hitler performing his Sieg Heil pose. I continued further down, and the pictures got severely more gruesome. What I couldn't believe was how the game designer could think that this was a good idea. It had no point to the game, it's simply here for shock value. The images got to the point where they were so gruesome, I just had to force myself not to look at them. Finally, I reached the end of a long hallway, but now I was just wondering how they managed to program that in the first place, because I certainly didn't see that on the outside. The door was red, but this time it was just a red rectangle. No decals, no textures, just a plain shape. Opening it, I was greeted to a large black room and a horde of blankly staring people. People who almost look real, with white eyes and swastikas cut onto the foreheads, standing hunched over like zombies. Suddenly, I began to hear a slow chant rise from the horde. At first, their sound was undecipherable, but then it began to rise higher, and I could make up more and more of what they were saying. The names of my family. I couldn't hear anything else in the game. I tried stabbing the horde to kill them, but there was no sound for that either. No music or sound effects, just that mindless chanting. I had enough of this and ripped off my headphones, freeing my ears from the chant that had now devolved into screaming, and I went to the menu. The only option I saw there again, die. But just before I closed the menu, now with my imagination running even more wild than last time, I could still hear the screaming from the headset. It sounded like bloody murder. Trying in vain to get rid of this damn thing, I attempted alt-tabbing, control-alt-deleting, and various other methods, all of which didn't work. My last option was as clear as crystal, and I reached back and unplugged my computer, sighing in relief as the screen went black. I sat in my computer chair, pondering over what happened, when I heard a faint scream came from downstairs. Going down to check what it was from, I found my grandmother had fallen down the basement stairs and unfortunately died. Then it hit me. The names the horde was chanting, none of their names were grandmother's name or mine.